So for today's talk, we're going to think about which courses interview. There are typically courses who interview, or which interview, and some that don't so much. There are various types of interviews which universities use, so we're going to think about those. We're going to look at particular subject areas and the assessment that the interviewers are looking for. Then we've got a few tips for students in terms of what they can do before the interview and preparation. There's a bit of general advice, and then we've got one or two little practice activities which we hope that they would find useful. So thinking in terms of which courses interview, obviously first and foremost it will depend on the university. Not all universities interview for all types of courses, but there are particular courses which generally do hold interviews, and these are, as you're probably aware, the health professions. So talking from Plymouth University, I know that we interview for dietetics, there's occupational therapy, physiotherapy, podiatry, social work. All of the nursing degrees will interview, and then midwifery and healthcare science. Again, as I've said, it will depend a little bit on the interview. We, on the university, we don't interview for optometry, for example. Medicine and dentistry, universities will always interview for those courses. The other ones, which you're probably aware of, for those of you that are teachers, of course, you'll know that you have to go through an interview if you're going to do a B.Ed in primary, or if you're going on to do PGCEs in primary or secondary teaching education. The other ones which generally interview, of course, are the arts and humanities. Most of those are portfolio interviews, and we're going to look in more detail at the different types of interviews later. And then thinking of one or two perhaps slight exceptions, and this is where it's always obviously the student needs to do their research, but for example at Plymouth University they do have interviews for the business management fast track. So these are degrees which have been brought in the last few years, and they enable the students to do a 3-year BA or BSc honours degree, and they allow them to do them in 2 years instead of 3 years. So for those, they need to interview because they want to know that the students have got the capacity, the tenacity, and the determination to do that course in 2 years, because it's much more intense. And then there are things like cruise management, where the student has work experience on a cruise ship, and so the interviewers or the university is looking to make sure that they've got the right kind of people who will be able to work in that sort of environment. And then, last but certainly not least, most of the Russell Group universities, so we're talking Cambridge, Oxford, Southampton, Exeter, other ones that spring to mind, most of those will interview, because obviously they've got very high competition and they're a bit more selective in terms of the students that they are going to take on. Thinking about the types of interview, obviously there are one-to-one interviews, which we've all experienced. Then there are the group interviews, and they tend to happen in particular subject areas, more of which later. Sometimes universities will use telephone interviews. They could be used as a kind of first port of call, if you like, where they have a very large number of students applying for a course and they want to do a first sort of sift. So they will quite often then phone and talk to the student as a first way to find out if they think that they're suitable, and then if they are, then they will progress on to a face-to-face interview a bit later on. And it's also worth remembering that some university interviews will include written tasks, and they could have English and maths tests. So thinking about the different courses, some quick examples here from personal experience. I've seen nursing interviews, and they could be speed dating or what are known as multiple mini interviews. They will always include numeracy and written tests. Social work, that I've seen interviews there, they have a written test and then they will have a topic given to them, and then there will be discussions for a group, and then possibly a one-to-one interview after that. For teaching, there's usually a group interview, and this will be often based on a reading task. This may be followed by one-to-one interviews, and then you've got the professional skill tests. Art and design, these are usually quite informal. There'll be one-to-one where the student gets to present their portfolio, and then for the dance and theatre there's a workshop which is part of the interview, and where the students are being tested on different techniques perhaps, as well as being asked sort of normal interview questions afterwards. So a little bit more detail on the types of interview style that students are likely to encounter. As we've already said, it does depend on the university and the course. The first one is known as MMI, which stands for multiple mini interviews, and I've seen this used in medicine and nursing, And this is where there are different stations, and quite often they can be set up in one room. So the nursing interviews that I've seen recently, there were 5 or 6 tables set up in the room. The students came in, they each had a one-to-one interview within the same room, and they had a very short, quick interview. Sometimes they will be set up in lots of different rooms, so the students will break out, go into one room, have an interview, then they'll come back out, then go back into another room. They're usually about 5 minutes per station, and they tend to have different interviewers, so that then the university can get a more objective assessment. So they're not just listening to one person's interpretation of what that student is like. They're getting 2 or 3, and then hopefully they're getting a more balanced viewpoint. The one-to-one, I mean, it's fairly obvious. The universities are looking to find out about the candidates. They want to know about their studies, what are their interests, and there's that old cliche of the what's your unique selling point? And it's worth, if you can ask your students to think about what is it that perhaps they are a bit different, something that they're doing that's a bit unique and makes them perhaps stand out, something that they can talk about. And they're looking for the usual obvious things, so they're looking for verbal communication. They want to know the students' interests and knowledge of the course, and also they're looking to see if they've got the potential to work as members of a group. I mean, nearly all courses these days at most universities, there's quite a strong element of group work. It's obviously something that employers are looking for, so universities make sure that their courses include it as well. And then finally, we've got the group interview. These can go on for an hour, sometimes more. It's usually a group discussion, and it can be based on an article or a scenario. This is something that students might see on the day, or they may be given a text beforehand. And then there will be a series of questions, and each individual is usually asked the same question. So it's quite interesting where I've seen it, because you could actually respond to something that's been said to the question previously by another candidate and perhaps talk a bit more around something and use their response. And in those sort of instances, they're really looking for commitment to the subject based on real experience, so they kind of want to know about what they think in terms of working in a classroom perhaps, or having some experience in a hospital on a ward. Okay, so are there any questions so far? Okay, so Jackie has asked, different health courses have their own ways of interviewing students. Why such a wide variation? It is difficult to guide students. I agree, Jackie. I think it's partly down to the individual institutions in terms of what they think is appropriate. It also, I think, depends a little bit on the numbers. So if they're trying to interview, if they get, and for most health courses they are popular, so we get oversubscribed, so it's a way for them to try and hopefully interview quite a few students in a shorter space of time. Yes, the one that I've seen here at Plymouth, basically they came in, they had a film which they saw, and then the group was split. 1/3 went out and started to do the interviews, 1/3 was doing the maths test, 1/3 was doing the literacy test, and then they swapped around and they came back into the room, and then some went and did the maths, and so it kind of worked like that. And in other places they'll have that group discussion. So, I mean, it will come in a slide at the end, but basically the university will always send a letter to the student, and they will give them details of what's going to happen on the day, the format, so they can prepare for it based on what the individual university may send to them. Are interviews for places on the increase? That's from Sarah. That's an interesting one. I'm not 100% sure. Again, I think it depends. What I would say is that now that they've removed the cap, so you're probably all aware that before universities had a cap on the number of students that they were allowed to admit, and it was quite bizarre in that they were allowed to admit up to a certain number, and if they recruited less than that number they could be fined, and then if they recruited above that number they could be fined. So the government's removed the cap now, and different universities have approached it in different ways. So places like Oxford and Cambridge obviously want to maintain their kind of elite, if you like, approach. So I don't think they have increased the number of places, but then there are other universities where they've seen it as a chance to recruit more students and get more fee income. So they've increased accommodation, they've built more spaces, so there's more classrooms available and things like that. So I guess if they're getting more students in, then they probably perhaps will interview a bit more if they're having to sort through larger numbers of students. Again, it will depend on as particular courses come on stream, as technology changes, as things develop in terms of what employers want and different degree courses are developed, then it may be that they've got particular specialisms and so they may be wanting to interview people. But we can definitely take that one away, and I can talk to some of the people here and find out what they think, and at the other universities who are part of our networks. Okay, so I'll continue on now, if everybody's happy, and then we'll have another stop in a few slides time. Okay, so I'm going to go through the different interview methods and the kind of assessment criteria that universities are looking for. So with the medical interviews, it's quite common to see these multiple mini interviews. There are numerous stations, and what happens is you'll get about 5 minutes per station, and then within each station they're testing different subject areas. So it could be things like motivation, they might be questioning about any work experience they've had, they're looking at to see if they've got you know, an inbuilt professionalism, and also their written verbal communication skills. Then you'll see perhaps in addition to that, or instead of, you might see some informal small panel interviews, which might be just 1 or 2 people. It might be an academic with a current student. They can be kind of semi-structured, and then you'll have the more traditional structured panel, and with those you tend to have between 3 and 4 panelists, and they will make sure that they have got lay community members, if you like. So those are people who are not in the profession, as well as, you know, a current doctor or an academic who's teaching on the course. In terms of types of questions, they're usually scripted questions which are related to ethical scenarios. It may be that there's an article that's been sent out to students beforehand, or something that they read when they arrive on the day, and then they're looking at their response to that particular article. There will be the usual general questions around teamwork. They're looking at you know, empathy, coping strategies, things that you would need if you're going to work in the health professions, specifically as a doctor. So they're looking at your ethical decision making, they're looking at high level critical thinking. Obviously you've got to have those communication skills, and also they want to know that you are up to date with sort of current healthcare and societal issues, so things that are impacting on, I mean, we've all seen about the doctors' strike at the moment, so that's probably something that they're going to be asking about in the current round of interviews for medical school, or the next round perhaps. So nursing interviews, as we've said, there are various types. They do use the multiple mini interviews, as I said, with different interviewers. They'll also perhaps have some formal interviews. Then you've got the assessment tests, and these are maths and English tests, and those are tests which the NHS actually demands, so that they want to know that the students have got a particular level in those areas. They're not, you know, they're not expecting Einstein. They are basic English and basic maths, so it's the usual things that you would expect. So they just need to know that they've got the kind of basic grasps of those things, so that they can read a chart within a hospital, so they can take a temperature, calculate medicine doses, that kind of thing. And then quite often we've seen with nursing, they'll have these group discussions, and the idea is that the students should participate, and it's a chance for them to show that they've got some knowledge of the subject area. And again, they're assessing critical thinking skills, perhaps not to the same level as they would for people who want to go on to train to be doctors, but also communication skills. Can they work in a team? Do they have those interpersonal skills to work with other people? And again, they want to know that they have been taking an interest in the current healthcare and issues that are impacting on society in those areas. And they also are thinking about those ethical dilemmas, because those are something which nurses will often be exposed to as well. The one that I saw, they showed a very short film, and it was a doctor in his surgery, and he had to break some bad news to a patient, and you know, he did it appallingly badly, and then people were breaking in the middle of the discussion, the consultation, and things like that. So it's kind of, you know, deliberately over exaggerated. But they then had to go away and they had to do a written piece. So their English piece was actually some questions about the film and what was their response to it, what did they think of it, how did it make them feel, and how would they respond in that situation. So it's quite interesting. Moving on to teaching interviews, something I've experienced myself and probably quite a few of you too. For some teaching posts, they'll still do formal interviews. The one that I've seen recently was an informal group discussion again, and they'd given the students an article, and they were students who were interested in applying to do a B.Ed in primary, but they wanted to specialise in English, so they'd given them an article which was all about children's reading habits. and there was some sort of controversial points raised in it, so they wanted them to be able to talk about it and give their opinion on it. And again, they want those students to try and participate, show that they've read the article, show that they've got an opinion, and that they're actually thinking about it in terms of what it might be like being a teacher and how they might work with those children and their literacy skills. How would they raise it? What do they think? And they made sure that, as I say, they kind of went around the group, they took it in turns in the order they did it, but each student got asked the same question, and you could build on it if you wanted to, but it's a chance for everybody to be judged kind of against each other. And they made a few notes as they went through and about people's responses, but also how they were kind of interacting with each other. And then, as you know, you've got the numeracy and literacy tests, the assessments that you have to do if you're going to go on to train and be a teacher. So they're assessing, actually they want to know that these students have got a commitment to teaching, because it's a very intensive course. There are lots of placements in schools. As you know yourself, it's quite a taxing environment. So they want to know that these students have got a commitment to teaching. Usually that can be demonstrated through the fact that they've done some kind of work placement in a school or in an educational setting. They want to know that they've got a commitment to their subject. So if they're going to go and they want to train to be an English teacher, they need to see that they are interested in English, and they want to find out about the books that they've read, what are their favourite authors, those kind of things. They want to know if they have got some sort of knowledge of what are the key topical issues in education. So hopefully those students have perhaps read some of the publications, they've been keeping up to date with what's happening in the press and those kind of things. And obviously as a teacher you've got to have very good both verbal and non-verbal communication skills, so they're looking at that, and they're kind of looking at them in terms of their classroom potential. So given that we've just covered the nursing and teaching interviews, it's a good place to just have a quick look at the group discussion, the hints and tips we've got here for you. So yes, we want students to contribute, but obviously not dominate. So if you know you've got some students going for these sorts of interviews and they're really sure of themselves and very confident, just remind them that not to dominate and to try and make sure that they involve some of the other people. Equally, if you have students that are a bit shy and they don't really speak up, they really need to try and participate. So hopefully if they've done some reading around the subject, they've got some opinions and they've thought about some of the things that they've read, then they've got something that they can add to the conversation. But I must say that they've structured, when they do the interviews, they do try and make sure that everybody contributes, and they make a point of asking people to step in and comment on things. Again, if you've got somebody that is very dominant, then don't jump all over them. It's about trying to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak up. If you know somebody who's good at empathising with other people and can draw out some of the quieter members and ask them for their views, that's a really good skill to have and to demonstrate. Speak clearly, of course, and it's very important to listen, because we all get into that kind of scenario where we're thinking, oh gosh, this question's coming up for me, what do I need to say? And actually, if you can just listen to what's being said, hopefully you can comment back and use that in your answers. Be prepared to compromise, don't go in there and be too hot-headed and with too strong an opinion about something. And if you can read any of the quality publications, so if there are any teaching magazines out there, the Quality Press, Times, Higher Education Supplement, things like that, it's just to show that you have actually made an effort to research a subject, then that's obviously going to help, and you can hopefully interject that into the group discussion. The arts interviews, so these are quite different in the sense that the art students are always going to bring, nearly always going to bring a portfolio. A quick aside, if students have got big pieces of work, there's an expectation that they would photograph them. They're not expected to haul massive great pieces of work to the interview, but if they can take 2 or 3 photos of it and then, or perhaps put it onto some kind of online computer presentation to demonstrate it that way, that's fine. Yes, a portfolio is required. As I've said, some very popular courses, they may require an online submission, so the students need to be ready to take photos, take some recordings, find out from the university what they're looking for, but have some kind of a virtual stroke video stroke photographic representation of the work that they've done, which they can put into something which can be submitted online. The portfolios need to be well presented and selective and well edited. And I'll talk a bit more about that later, but basically if they're going for an interview in a particular subject area or at a particular university, they need to think about the work that they're going to show. And it doesn't just have to be all the end pieces, so the interviewers and the academics are interested in seeing the process. So it can be everything from sketchbooks right through to the finished article. Talking to the academics that do this here and at the other universities, we know that they're looking at about 20-minute presentation, and the student can talk through their work, demonstrate their portfolio, present it, and then at the end they will be asked questions which will go on for about 10-15 minutes. And so it's that selecting the best work which is most relevant to the desired course, but also on top of that, if they are going in and they're demonstrating work in a particular field, so for example fine art, then who is the person that they like in that field? Whose work do they know? Who have they been inspired by? They need to have some knowledge around key figures in their field. So the interviewers, again, this is what they're assessing. Yes, they want to see evidence of creativity, of course, and that will come through in the work. They're looking for those students to demonstrate that they've got an understanding of visual communication. So the work that they produced, how is it communicating itself to an external audience, the other people around them? They also need skills in project development and research. Those are the kind of things that they're looking for, because when they're at the university, they will quite often be given their own studio space. They'll be given a project and they have to go away and be able to develop it with fairly minimum supervision. So it's about having that independence and being able to develop a project from the instigation and see it right through and finish it, and all the relevant research that goes into that. They need to be able to communicate the reasons and the choices and the concepts behind their work. So if they've done something, why, how, what inspired them to do it. And they want to be able to see that they've got the ability to organise their ideas, and they're really interested in the process that the candidate went through in producing those pieces of work. Yes, they do want to see some technical skill, but interestingly, having talked to the academics, that's not the most important thing, because they believe that they can develop that in the students as they go through the course. So they're kind of almost more interested in the process and the ability to come up with a project and work through it and think about the contextual elements, you know, what's the inspiration behind it, and are they reflecting on their work, so they hopefully see some progression, perhaps from early pieces to later pieces. The other thing is they may actually look at writing skills sometimes. They might get them to write about a piece of work just to make, because they will have to write essays. It's not all going to be producing pieces of art. And they'll usually be trying to work out whether the student has got some kind of long-term interest in the subject field. It's not just something they thought, oh crikey, I need to go to university and I want to do, I know, I'll pick fine art at Bournemouth. So they need to know that they are actually interested in that subject. In terms of the theatre and dance and choreography, this is where they do need to demonstrate technique. They do need to have some skill. Quite often they'll have small group exercises again, and they will give them some dance moves which they then develop as a group. For theatre, they may ask them to memorise a piece of text, and it could be something that they've come up with themselves, or it may be something that they've been inspired by, and then they will perform it. And then they might actually give them a piece of work on the day and get them to improvise it within a group. Most of those theatre and dance kind of interviews, they'll usually get them to do some sort of warm-up exercises with a technical workshop and then perhaps a creative workshop after, so they can see that they've got the technical skills but also then hopefully the creativity to go with it. So some of the ones that I've seen, it will depend again on the university. They could be a two-stage audition process where candidates could perform different pieces of work. It might be a monologue, for example, if they're going for theatre. They want to know why they chose it, where the play came from, or they might just say, right, off you go, you can perform it, and they won't get asked for any explanation. And then they'll go through the more kind of interview process where they might select one of those monologues and give the candidate a series of directions or instructions, and then from that they're going to assess how the candidate interprets and works through their suggestions. So I guess it's about them being able to understand the directions that they're given and show that they can interpret them and hopefully do it in a creative way, but also making sure that they have actually taken on board what they're being asked to do. In terms of the assessment, in the warm-ups and the technical workshops, obviously they're going to assess kind of basic levels of body awareness, the skills that they developed, hopefully that they're up to scratch in terms of coming on and doing the course at the university. Also, they want to know about their ability to work with other people. Can they work creatively in a group setting? Can they interact with those other people around them and work in a positive way, exchange ideas, build on ideas? all those kind of things, because that's obviously very important in terms of the group work. Can they take those directions, as we already talked about, and work with them? And again, have they got an interest in the knowledge of acting as a discipline or as dance as a discipline? So who are the people that they admire? Why? Those sort of questions will always crop up. Okay, so we broke down sort of different things being asked in different types of interviews. We're going to go through some questions and preparation stuff in a minute, but this is a chance for you now to ask any more questions if you've got some, so please fire away. So Jackie said, do pastoral care topics crop up in interviews, e.g. safeguarding, prevent, etc.? Not in the ones that I've seen, Jackie. That's the kind of thing that, for example, if you're going to go into teaching, then the admissions team will always make sure that you've done a DBS check, and they will obviously do that. Same for health as well. So I'm assuming that because the students will have to do that, that's going to evidence the fact that they are okay on safeguarding. Whether it would come up in perhaps if you went into BEd primary and your specialism was special educational needs, then it might be something perhaps that would come up in that. But we can take that question away. I can go back to the people I know at Marjon and at Plymouth who run the teaching courses and ask if they do ever ask anything around that. I've had a question from Angelina, and she says, are veterinary interviews similar to medical? I must admit, I've never actually seen a veterinary one, and none of the higher education institutions in our group do veterinary medicine. So I can probably try and find out, but I'm assuming that probably would be similar. Perhaps not so much in the terms of empathising with people. I guess it's empathising with animals, but you've still got to meet people and work with them. That's a good point. We can go and do some research and find out about that. There is one of our partner colleges actually does a veterinary medicine type course, so I can probably find out from one of them actually, so we can take that away. Are there ways companies, this is from Sarah, sorry, are there ways or companies that can be used to recreate the mini interviews? Yes, there are, Sarah. I'm not sure in terms of how much they would cost and things. When I was doing a bit of research online and went in and to try and find out about them, there were companies that were advertising and saying, you know, we can do this for you, you can practice it if you want. I think initially the ones I saw were American ones, but I suspect that there will be companies in this country as well. I mean, in terms of doing, I was going to mention this at the end, but we may as well mention it now. I mean, there are a few different, quite often universities will help out with mock interviews, and quite often you can get local employers, careers advisors, those sorts of things. So I've been to a few schools and done it myself where I've helped out. We've done mock interviews for the students, and obviously from the students' point of view, if you've got an external person coming in, it's a bit more real, but they're always very beneficial. So, I mean, if the school can organise it and you can find enough people, then I don't see, if you've got the space, of course, as well, why you couldn't actually set something up like that yourself, and you could probably get some mock questions online or perhaps ask a university or something like that. Haley, so you've got how or who do we contact to get you guys into help with mock interviews? If you, at the end of the presentation, I'll put up a slide which has got some contact details, and then you can email the DCON web box or you can email myself, and we're more than happy to try and help out with that. And if it's not in our immediate area, if you like, then I can always talk to the other networks and we can pick it up that way. Okay, yep, that's good. So we'll move on now to the last part. So what we thought from our experience and having been out and worked with students is there are generally some fairly typical questions. So these are the ones that we've come up with, and hopefully they'll be useful to you as well. So quite often students ask, will they automatically be called for an interview? So the answer is no. They need to have the right predicted grades. I mean, if there's a big application, then the academics and the admissions tutors will go through and then they'll pick out who they think are the most suitable candidates, and then they would be called for an interview. So the students need to meet the entry requirements, and then they need to be shortlisted, and then if that happens, then they would be called to an interview. So as I said earlier, quite often students worry about the maths test. It's usually very simple. It's basic maths. It's just multiplication, division, percentages, decimals. So it's the kind of thing, if any students are worried about it, go online, go into perhaps the teacher's website or the National Health Service websites, and they will usually have, examples of the type of questions that are asked, practice tests, all those kind of things. I mean, when I was going in for my teaching and had to do the QTS stuff, then that's what I did. And with the ones for teaching, they always get to do the first one free, and there are centres set up all around the country, so there are chances to practice and make sure that you kind of know what you're doing before you actually go and sit the test. Does everyone who's interviewed get offered a place? We quite often get asked that. No, just because you've been often interviewed doesn't mean to say you'll get a place, because obviously the interview is part of them working out whether they think you're a suitable candidate for the course. But if the student makes a good impression and then they meet the academic requirements, then they will be offered a place. Who will be on the interview panel? We often ask this. I would say that there will be up to 3 interviewers. Depend partly again on the university, how busy, how many students, all those kind of things, what time of year, time in the year, how busy they are. But they are made up of, usually it's the current academics who are teaching on the course. Quite often they'll get in some current students, or they might have some representatives from other bodies. So for example, for nursing and things like that, they might have actual nurses who help with the training in hospitals. They might come in and interview for the day, things like that. So it'll be a mixture. It's usually up to 3, but no more than that. How long will it last? As you've seen, if you're going to do a theatre or a dance session, it could be up to half a day, because they have to come in and do one session, they might have a break, have an interview, do another session afterwards. But for most one-to-one type interviews, they're quite quick and short. They're usually between 20 and 40 minutes. How will I know where to go? Students quite often ask this. You will always be given all the details that you need beforehand in a letter, or an email these days, of course, but I know that we still send out formal letters, so that we do that with an email to make sure that the students hopefully get everything they need. But the students do need to read it carefully, and then if there's anything that they're not clear about, they can always come back to the admissions tutors, back to the universities involved, and double check. But all the details that they are given will be the ones that they need, so it will all be there, and it will tell them what time, where do they need to be, all those kind of things. So in terms of what can the students do before the interview, this is fairly obvious stuff, but it's worth reiterating, and it's good to pass on to students, make sure that they're aware of it. So they do need to research the sector. If you or I were going for a job interview, we'd make sure we found out about the organisation, we'd make sure we found out what they made, what they did, who were the key people perhaps. So students need to do the same thing. They need to find out about the university, what it's like, who's running their course, what are the modules. All university websites will show the course, how long it lasts, what are the modules you do in the first year, then the second year. So it gives the students a chance to look into it, get the detail, and then be able to talk about it during their interview. Anything that's been in the news recently that's appropriate. If you're going for an NHS-based course, then the NHS has got these values-based recruitment, which are called 6 Cs: care, compassion, competence, communication, courage, and commitment. So you need to be aware of things like that. There are lots of different teaching magazines. There are nursing, midwifery journals. If the students can go to a library or go online, find out about them that way, read some of the articles, find out what's in the news. It will all be good material for them to have to bring to the interview. Some of them, of course, yes, it really helps to get work experience, even if it's just shadowing somebody on the job. We know it's difficult, especially for some of the NHS positions, but you've just got to be persistent, try and find out whose mum's a nurse or whose dad's a doctor, and see if you can get a foot in the door somewhere, and see if you can get some direct experience with those service users. It's really important to research the role in detail, and it's not just thinking, I'm going for an interview in, I don't know, business, okay, that's fine, I don't need to worry about it. Well, actually look at what the people are doing in the sector, find out what the job profiles are. If you look at a job for a nurse, it will talk about the skills that the nurses have got to have. So that will give you, if you're going to try and study it at university, it'll give you a good idea of what you need to come out with at the end in terms of the skills and the qualities. So you may be asked questions around those, and it's well worth trying to find out beforehand what they might be. So for the students, it's worth saying, this is a chance for the admissions tutors to find out about you, so they need to be able to talk about themselves. If you can get students to start thinking about the different skills and the different qualities that they've got, there are various sites where they can start recording it. Hopefully this is the kind of thing that you're doing with them in sessions with them at school. If they've reflected, the better prepared they will be for the interview. And they really do need to think about why they want to apply for this course, because they will almost certainly, or not, they will certainly be asked about that. It's one of the key questions. Why do you want to come and study geography at Swansea? You know, they need to have an answer for that. If they can reflect a bit more about their general life experiences, the things that they've done at school, but perhaps outside of school as well, are there any influential people they know, different circumstances, what have they taken part in, who are your role models, are you coming for an interview, you want to be a doctor, who's your role model, can you think about any difficulties you've overcome? That's a good example to talk about problem solving. What are the students currently learning on their course? What do they like about it? What do they find interesting? And it's good for the students to think about what their opinions are on current topics. What are the reasons for them? Because if they can start thinking about it, then it will make them better able to empathise with other people, to listen to other people's opinions, and be able to have constructive discussions with them about it. You know, find some examples of things that the students are good at, but also get them to think about things that they perhaps find more difficult, so they can talk about that, because that's just as valuable as the things that they are good at. And also if they can have an idea about what they want to do in the short term and perhaps medium term. So, you know, you want to come and study this course, why do you want to study it, what's it going to lead into hopefully for you? So if they can think a little bit further ahead, I know it's difficult, they're just trying to think about getting into university, but if they can think about why they want to do that course, what would it hopefully lead to, what's the motivation, what's the end point, if you like, so that would all be useful stuff to be able to talk about. So these are the kind of key questions that we think every student applicant should have an answer to. Why did you apply to the University of St Marcus and John? Why did you apply to Exeter University? Why did you apply to Plymouth University? Okay, if they can go to an open day beforehand, if they can think about it, do some research, they need to have an answer for that. Why did you apply for the degree in social work? Why did you apply for a degree in chemistry? Okay, they need to be able to answer that. They need to be able to talk about it, why they're interested in the subject, what they're hoping to get out of the degree at the end of it, all those kind of things. Quite often, yes, what experience do you have, that is relevant. And sometimes students say to me, oh, well, I've got a part-time job working in Morrison's and all I do is serve in a till or stack shelves, but that's not relevant to doing a degree in geography. But actually, what they can do is think about the skills that they've developed through that work experience. So they've talked to customers, they've got good communication skills, you know, they've worked in a team. So they can use those and say, well, actually, I've worked in a team in Morrison's when I've been stacking the shelves, and part of my role has been liaising with the manager and then the staff, When you're doing a degree in geography, you're going to go on field trips, you need to be able to work with other people. So it's bringing it in and making it relevant to the course that they want to do. Yes, as I've already said, think about where they want to go after the course is finished. Hopefully, where do they see themselves ending up as a result of doing the course. Interviewers will always say, you know, what skills and qualities do you have that will be relevant to my course in social history or whatever it may be. So the students need to be able to think about the things that they've done, what they can bring to the course. And also, quite often they'll say, what do you think you'll find challenging about the course? And that might be something in terms of the academic part of the course, but it might be something as simple as around, well, I'm moving away from home for the first time, so I'm going to find it challenging living on my own, organising my work, being independent. So as long as the students have thought about it and they've got some kind of answer and it's not a surprise, then they will find it easier and they'll give a better answer. And also we need to think a little bit about the STAR technique. Probably some of you are aware of this, but it's quite often new to students and it's something that is a really good tool to use. So a lot of questions are competency based these days, and you need to be able to think about it in terms of the situation, the task, what did you have to do, what was the action that you did and the result that you achieved. So it can be something fairly basic. I've got an example here so I can just talk it through. So for example, the situation is during my last quarter of school I completed an internship at Memorial Hospital in the Health Information Management Department. I was the first and only intern the department had ever had, and they decided they wanted to continue with an official intern program. So that's the situation. What's the task? Well, in order to successfully launch this program, my supervisor asked me to create and administer a training curriculum for the new incoming interns. So what was the action that the intern took? So to complete this task, First, I outlined all the procedures new in terms of what you need to learn about. Then I had to operate the 10-line phone system, and then I had to work out how to use the health record index and storage system. Next, I created a 3-day training agenda covering these topics, and then finally I facilitated it. So those were the actions that they took, and then the result was the training was a huge success. On a survey completed after training, all 4 interns rated the program a 10 out of 10 in the areas of usefulness and creativity. So it's just that, it can be very simple, something that they've done. What was the situation? What's the task that they were asked to do or they had to do, the action that they took to complete that task, and then what was the result. And if they can kind of get into that way of thinking, it actually makes it a lot easier when they come to the interview, because they can start using the examples that they've got. Obvious things like, don't rush. I know it's a cliche, but if they can try and be themselves, don't go in there thinking, oh, they want me to be like this. Don't try and give a false impression, be somebody you're not. It's much better for you to be yourself, because you'll be more comfortable, and the interviews you'll get a clearer and more authentic impression of what you are like and who you are. And sometimes students can start off and feel, because they're feeling nervous, they don't answer the first question very well, and then they think, oh no, it's all going to go downhill. So make sure they get into that mindset of each question is new, it's another one, it's another chance for them to express themselves and give a good answer, so they don't get down if they make a hash of one question or not. And actually, there's nothing wrong with making notes if they want to, if it helps them and makes it easier for them. In terms of what the tutors are looking for, yes, we've already touched on this, but it's worth reiterating again. They want to know that they've got knowledge and understanding of the subject area or the profession they might lead into. They want to know the students have got a commitment. They want to know that they're enthusiastic about the course and they're interested in the subject. Have they got any relevant work experience or work that they've done which shows that they've got relevant skills? That's great. They want to know the students have got a willingness to learn. They need to see that they can communicate. A lot of times they need to be able to empathise with others. They're going to be doing group work, etc. Can they demonstrate any problem-solving skills? Can they demonstrate use of initiative? And then, of course, at university, if they can show some kind of ability in terms of being able to work independently as well as in groups, that's great. They need to show that they can work under pressure. I mean, your students will have to meet deadlines in terms of submitting homework and essays and that kind of thing. That's effectively increased when they get to university, but it's done in an incremental way, so as long as they've got some kind of evidence that they can do that, that's fine. And also they want to know that they are fairly rounded individuals, so hopefully they've got some outside interests and activities. Transferable skills. Get your students thinking about transferable skills. What are the things that they do in their schoolwork, in their home life, in their hobbies, which show that they are developing communication, teamwork, independent study, listening skills, all those sorts of things, because they are doing it. Sometimes it's hard for the students to kind of pull it out and actually understand how they're demonstrating it. Here's one or two little things that people can do. It's very difficult sometimes to talk about something that you don't know that well or you're not really sure about, so maybe if they find a topic that they really like, X Factor Strictly, The Voice is on at the moment, and then they have to talk about it for 5 minutes. And then once they've done that and they kind of get into the habit of what it's like to talk about something for a period of time, then you could say to them, right, okay, now you want to talk about you and your future plans within the sector, so they can start developing it in the context that will be useful for the interviews, and trying to get that same enthusiasm. How did they feel when they were talking about the X Factor, something they really liked? If they can recreate that when they're going to the university interview, then that's going to be great. And then the topical questions, so make sure they're reading the quality press, only magazines are relevant. If they know anybody in the profession, perhaps they can talk to them. Any other newsworthy topics that come up, make a note, jot it down, just so you've got it there as an A memoir. And then if you can, yes, get a friend or family to watch and give feedback, but then actually we always say, if you can, and it's not always practical, find a teacher who you perhaps don't really like that much or don't get on so well with, or perhaps you're a bit afraid of, and then get them to interview, because that'll be more like doing the real thing, if you like. Not that I'm saying that these university interviewers are all horrible people, they're not. They're trying to put the students at ease and make sure that they give a good account of themselves, but for the students who haven't done many interviews before, if they're just doing it in front of their friends or family, they won't always get very good feedback. So that's why it's good if you can bring in some external people, then that will obviously help them in that way. One last point, I quite often get asked, what should people wear? I think it depends again on the subject. For the teaching and the nursing interviews, I've seen people generally, it's kind of smart casual if you like, so they put on a clean shirt, smart trousers, and they don't put on a suit and a tie, but they look, respectable and well presented. For the arts interviews, it's much more informal. People tend to come in jeans and t-shirt, that kind of thing, but students need to be aware of the impression that they're giving. So don't look too scruffy, and make sure that you're reasonably well presented. They've had a shower, they've brushed their hair, the kind of obvious things to us, but perhaps not so much to them. Nearly finished now, but I like to bring the slide up because it's not always immediately obvious, especially to younger people. When you are meeting people for the first time, when you're going for interviews, the visual impact is 55% of your total 100% impact, if you like. The tone of voice is 38%, and actually what you say is only 7%. So you can see that the visual impact is important. So if they can have a practice of an interview, think about how they're going to carry themselves, tone of voice, coming across as confident, smiling, all those sorts of things, which are easier said than done. But it's important that they do think about that and try and give a good impression of themselves. Last slide. If they can attend an open day, it's great to go along to university, get a feel for it, see what it's like, find out more about the courses from the horse's mouth. Yes, you must research the course and the subject you're interested in. Also, don't forget to reread your application form and your personal statement, because quite often the admissions tutors will have a look at that beforehand and they might ask them something about the personal statement, so they need to remember what they've written because it could have been months ago. Yes, make a good first impression, and if they can, be themselves. Okay, thanks very much for participating today. I hope you've all found it useful. Can I just draw your attention to the Survey Monkey? So this is a chance for us to gauge how you found today's session. Hopefully it's been useful. If there are other things that perhaps you would like to see in the future covered, it's very short. It'll only take you 30, 60 seconds to fill in. We'd really appreciate it if you could do that. As we've said, the webinar has been recorded and we'll make sure it's available online in the near future. And there are more to come. So those of you that have signed up for this one will know that there are lots more, and hopefully there'll be some more things which are interesting and of relevance to you. So for those of you that want to pick up any points individually, please feel free to email us, Devon Collaborative Outreach Network, DCON@plymouth.ac.uk, or myself, julian.true@plymouth.ac.uk. Okay, so any final questions? So do the techniques, this is from Joanna, she says, do the techniques you suggest for the art-related courses applied to design and technology courses? I would say yes, because again, you're going to be showing a portfolio. So it's about thinking about the process that you've gone through in producing those pieces of work. And that tends to be what they're interested in more than anything. Okay, so unless you've got a burning question, then please feel free to exit, and I hope you found it useful, and it will be available online, so hopefully if you've got other colleagues that you think would like it, then please pass it on to them as well. Thanks very much for your time today. Bye-bye.